Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Luella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Jamie McClooney, Product Marketing Manager at Papercut. Today we'll be talking about sustainability, particularly how Papercut are helping their customers reduce the environmental impact of printing, and also hearing more about Papercut's Forest Positive Printing initiatives. So welcome to the show, Jamie. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Luella. It is fantastic to be here. Super excited to talk sustainability, big sustainability nerd. So this is a fantastic opportunity.
So the print industry, as we know, has been firmly focused on sustainability for a while. And, we see a lot of the hardware vendors making enhancements around the energy efficiency of their products, as well as circularity around the whole product life cycle. But where we really see the opportunities around sustainability is on the print management and software side. So before we get onto that, could you tell us a bit about your role at Papercut and perhaps a bit about your career journey to date?
Absolutely. So long story, kind of short. You probably guessed from my accent, not actually Australian like most paper cutters. I'm Canadian, grew up in Canada, live in Canada, but my life took me to Australia where I had family. Before going to Papercut in Australia, my career's pretty much always been in IT. Did a lot of infrastructure roles around really, really exciting things like disaster recovery and document archives and CRM. And it's all valuable stuff, but deep infrastructure tech. Eventually moved into management consulting, helping organizations understand and solve their problems. But when I joined Papercut, I was really excited to join a smaller organization, a more focused organization where I could have a bigger impact and not just help other people with their problems, but really make some of those problems my own and bring those end-to-end solutions to market and help tell those product stories. So I've been doing that at Papercut for just over 4 years now. Worked on our cloud print platform in the Pocket and Hive space. I've done some really cool stuff with cloud OCR, document processing, all of that digitization stuff, which is close to your heart. Last big project was an integration with Microsoft. The elephant, we're the little mouse. But, when it comes to universal print, Papercut and Microsoft, we had a lot to share with each other. So that was fascinating. But now my new focus, my new passion is something, as we said, close to my heart, sustainability. And I've been privileged to work on Papercut sustainability initiatives for the last year or so, both on helping Papercut make our own operations more sustainable. And as you alluded, ways that we can help our customers make their own printing more sustainable. So that's me in a very, very small nutshell.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That's a really interesting career history. And I had a conversation with Chris Dance last year on the podcast. And, it's very clear that sustainability has been central to Papercut's ethos since its inception. And I think, that's, clearly been a core focus for Papercut for some time. So could you tell us a bit about what Papercut is doing around sustainability, but also how you're helping your customers? And maybe you can talk a bit about the Forest Positive program as well.
Absolutely. So you're just throwing the doors wide open for me. Here I go. I'll try to keep it short. We're not doing an hour-long, in-depth journalistic piece here. It's a podcast. Focus, Jamie. Focus. Okay. Sustainability at Papercut. First, what are we doing ourselves? Like most organizations, we want to make our own operations as sustainable as they can be. So, we're doing a lot of the things the usual software companies do. When we look at our cloud hosting providers, where we run all our cloud services, Papercut, we go with Google and all of their data centers. They work very hard to offset all of the energy emissions, the carbon for their operations. Cool. We purchase renewable energy for our business operations, our actual offices in Melbourne, in Bracknell outside of London, in your neck of the woods, and in Portland, Oregon, over in the US. But one of the big things we've been working on the last year or so is B Corp certification. What the heck is B Corp? Some people have heard of it, some haven't. Short explanation. Some people have heard of benefit corporation. Similar thing. A benefit corporation is a government legal status. B Corp is more of an opt-in commercial status. But what the B Corp program is all about is it's a global program for businesses that want to really push forward a global movement to make their businesses more inclusive, more sustainable, and part of a regenerative economy. So instead of the business being primarily driven to produce shareholder returns. That's still part of the picture, but also the businesses to achieve B Corp certification modify their governance structures so they actually have to take into account the benefit they provide not only to shareholders, but to workers, to communities, and to the environment. So it's more of a holistic measuring and auditing of a business's impact, both economically, socially, and environmentally. And there's a lot of certification that you go through, a lot of auditing, and PaperCut's going through that process as we speak. And this is something that Chris Dance and Matt Doran, our founders, are super passionate about and have been leading the charge on. So PaperCut is now restructuring our operations to be a certified B Corporation. We're in the process of achieving that certification. And so sometime next year, most likely, we're going to have a very happy announcement and celebration of that when we solidify our commitments, not just to environmental sustainability, but to some of the more social and social justice, inclusivity aspects of our operation, and how PaperCut operates as a corporate citizen, not just economically, but socially. So that's super, super, super exciting. And obviously the environment's a big part of that. So that's a lot of what PaperCut's been doing ourselves. The second area is what we've been doing for our customers. Because it's great to talk about what we do for ourselves, pat myself on the back. Good work, Jamie. It's mostly everyone else's work. I just get to talk about it. But it's the customers that I get super excited about, because PaperCut's one organization. And no matter how good we are, we can make a relatively small impact. We're less than 300 staff. We're a software company. We don't have a massive environmental footprint, but we have 75,000 customer organizations all over the world. If I can help those organizations be more sustainable and improve their ecological footprint, that's a huge opportunity to make a real difference. So, I always say it's long story short, because everything's a long story, because there's so much history and so many threads to pull, but it's good. So what we're doing for our customers all started around this time last year at our company hackathon. So every year, PaperCut has a hackathon for 2 or 3 days, depending on the year, where everyone, and not just the software engineers, everyone, the product marketing people like me, the product management people, the engineers, marketing, go-to-market, channel, everyone in our organization downs tools and gets to work on whatever cool projects they think are going to help the business for 2 days. And one of the exciting things to come out of the Constructival, it's what PaperCut calls our hackathon, the Constructival last year, was this idea that was called PaperCut Grows, because we love terrible puns at PaperCut, and it's about planting trees. Trees. Why trees? What's going on with trees? Well, we're PaperCut. We're a software company. We don't make physical things. We can't improve the efficiency of a copier or a printer. We can't work to reduce e-waste in our products because we don't produce any directly. We give our customers software, but our customers print. And yes, they use hardware from all the manufacturing partners, but they also use paper. Printing takes paper. So some of smart people in the organization, not me, this wasn't my idea, I'm not going to take credit for it, thought, well, what if there was an easy way for our customers to be connected with a nonprofit tree planting organization so that when they printed, they also planted. So then instead of just consuming paper and forest resources and contributing to deforestation, they can make a positive difference to help reforest, to help fight climate change. And that idea took on a life of its own after the hackathon. And that's what we've been working on for the last year or so, that I've been working on very closely with our engineering teams. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, but I'm going to stop for a breath and see if you have any questions about that so far, because I said, long story.
It's really interesting. And I think it's fascinating to hear, the approaches that PaperCut are taking, in terms of the B Corp certification, which I think is probably not, very widely well known in the print industry. And I think, it tends to be the smaller ISPs who have the opportunity to work on that certification. So that's really interesting, and look forward to hearing more about that. Like you say, it would be next year, I guess, when you get the certification. But I think, this kind of proactive approach to waste reduction, your customers are obviously using Papercut to get a better understanding of their print costs, their print usage, and so on. And I think this is a really interesting enhancement in that they can actually see the correlation between when they're printing and how they can actually offset that with planting trees. And I'm curious, actually, because you mentioned it kind of was, it came out about through the hackathon. And have you had a lot of customer interest in terms of, obviously, they're using Papercut to better manage their print costs and usage, as I said. But have you seen that they're looking more now at environmental impact and printing? And, our research is showing that more organizations, because they're more clear on their sustainability goals, paper reduction is one of the top priorities now. So are you seeing that as well from your customers, and does it vary by region?
Yes, we are absolutely seeing that from our customers. And yes, it does vary by region, interestingly. So as part of developing Papercut Grows and this new sustainability offering, we talk to a lot of our existing customers, because as you point out, a lot of customers use Papercut and love Papercut, not just to track their printing, but also to help manage waste. And, this goes back to, what Chris Dance tells you about whenever you catch up, the story of starting Papercut, when it was him and Matt, and Chris was working as a sysadmin at a school, and he was horrified to see all of this wasted paper by the printers, uncollected print jobs, duplicate print jobs, just irresponsible print, piles of waste. It gets recycled, but it's waste. So he develops the Papercut software. We develop hold release, and suddenly organizations are saving like a third of their previous print volumes or more. And our customers love that already. Saving paper helps the environment, helps the bottom line. And our customers love that. But to your point, they want to do more. More and more organizations now are taking sustainability much more seriously as a business activity. It's not a nice to have, feel good, that kind of thing. It's really become part of business governance because it affects the bottom line. So when we were doing our research with our customer focus groups, with our partners in the different regions, and also by looking at research material like Quocirca puts out, shameless plug for your own reports, we were getting the same information. Businesses see sustainability as one of their biggest challenges to continue operating successfully in the future. Wow. Okay. So there is a demand. There's a need for that. And at Papercut, we see this good idea come up out of the hackathon. And then our leadership starts thinking and saying, what? That feels good. It feels right. It's aligned to our values. But that's actually a great fit for what the market wants right now. This is a way we can help our customers solve the second half of the print equation. We made a nice little infographic. It's on our website. But, the forest positive printing equation, get to in a sec, has two parts. The first part, waste reduction. It's the problem we've been solving for 20 odd years. Stop wasteful printing. People print, but only print what they need. Don't accidentally print. Sensible printing. Papercut's great at that. That's only half the problem, though. Because for the stuff you do print, how do you make that more environmentally responsible? And that's the second half of the print equation, the tree planting, replenishing the forest resources that are used to make that paper. So with the waste reduction and now with the reforestation, that together is the forest positive printing equation, which I swear I'm going to talk about, but I don't want to jump the gun because there's so much good stuff in this conversation. I'm holding myself back here, I promise.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's really interesting to sort of understand a bit more about the background to why you started with this program, and also the customer requirements. We're definitely seeing that, as I said, with our research, in terms of that customers are now looking for two sort of key areas. They're looking to see what their suppliers are doing in terms of reducing the environmental impact of their own operations, but also how those suppliers are embedding sustainability in their products and services to help those customers reduce their environmental impact. And I think it's a really interesting one in the print industry because it is so tied to paper production and obviously all the sort of environmental impact of that. So now's your opportunity. Can you talk a bit about Forest Positive? Just tell us a bit more about what that entails. And I know you've got some really, really interesting facts around trees and paper production, which I think will be really interesting for the audience.
All right. Deep breath. What is Forest Positive printing? Because it's a new thing. It's a thing that we've made up. But to be honest, we didn't actually make it up, because the Forest Positive movement has been around for years. And I give IKEA a lot of credit for really initiating and championing this. Forest Positive, as a business practice, you think in your mind, carbon positive, what does that mean? It's all about, your emissions, carbon neutral, that kind of stuff. So flip that, take it from carbon into forests. IKEA, for example, uses a huge amount of wood to make all of that great furniture that we all assemble with the little Allen keys. Everyone knows IKEA furniture. It's great. Uses a lot of wood. So IKEA, being a very sustainability focused business and wanting to be a long-term responsible business, committed years ago to planting more trees than they cut down to make their furniture, making their net business impact on the world's forests positive, not just neutral. They're not just cutting down one, planting one. No, they cut down one, they plant more than one. Forest Positive. And we love that. So now, Forest Positive printing. Similar concept. When you print, when you use that paper specifically with, the PaperCut Grows program, which we've developed for our customers, you plant more trees than were cut down to make your printer paper. That's the bottom line. That is what Forest Positive printing is. It's putting back more than you take from the world's forest when you print, for the next person, for the next customer, for the next generation, for the next, future of humanity. Forests and trees, they seem simple and ubiquitous. There's trees everywhere, but there need to be trees everywhere, because there's a lot of cool science going on right now around carbon sequestration. Ooh, big word. But basically just means sucking carbon out of the air, where it causes global warming and huge climate problems. And that's awful. Too much carbon in the air. Got to get it out. Got to sequester it somewhere. So people are working on great tech to make it into like stone bricks, or blend it into other chemical and industrial processes to turn it into like fertilizers, or actually crack the carbon and the oxygen out separately and use the carbon to make like carbon fiber and nanotubes for aerospace stuff, and the oxygen for rocket fuel. It's amazing. But those technologies are in their infancy. They're promising, but they're not scalable. Carbon in the air is a problem. Today, still, the best way to sequester carbon from the atmosphere is trees. Trees are natural carbon sinks. As they grow, they suck carbon dioxide out of the air. Photosynthesis. We all did science in school, right, when we were kids. But that carbon dioxide turns into wood. It turns into roots. It goes into the soil. More trees, less carbon in the air. Part of the problem with climate change, with global warming, has been the colossal deforestation that we as a species have led to. And like, I'm not just talking since the Industrial Revolution and, logging the forests of the tropics in Western Europe. Human-induced climate change through deforestation goes back like pre-Roman Empire. It's incredible. There's a huge body of literature on it. It's fascinating, but I'm not going to go into that now. But this is why we're so passionate, me personally, and us at PaperCut, about planting more than you print, Forest Positive printing, because those trees are literally the lungs of the planet. They keep us in clean air, in clean water. Like, the amount of water that trees filter is nuts. I had some notes because these numbers are crazy and they blow my mind every time, right? So PaperCut Grows is how we're helping our customers plant trees, become Forest Positive. I'll come back to that. But one of the other things we've been doing ourselves, just to do our part and be a better organization, is for the last couple of years, since 2020, every time we sold a PaperCut product, we planted a tree to an organization called Carbon Positive Australia, in Australia, where our head office is. Very dry country, a country that suffered its own share of deforestation. So since 2020, we've planted just about 20,000 trees. So we've sold 20,000 PaperCuts, all of our different product versions all over the world. It's a lot of trees. So 20,000 trees. 20,000 trees every year filter through their leaves, through photosynthesis, about 300 million liters of water.
Wow.
That's a lot. Like, that's a big number. How much water is that? That's enough drinking water for over 400,000 people for a year. So it's not just the carbon. They clean the air, they clean the water, but it's also a lot of carbon. Those 20,000 trees, which is, just our own contribution over the last couple of years, drop in the bucket, but 20,000 trees, that's over 200,000 kilos of carbon dioxide every year pulled out of the air. That's more than is produced by, 312 average cars, which is actually a nice number because we've got less than 300 employees at PaperCut. So effectively, our tree planting has made up for the driving emissions of all of our staff. And that's just something we've been doing for ourselves. Mm-hmm. But now, like I said, we're one organization. We've got 75,000 customers. All of them, through PaperCut Grows, can make their printing forest positive and plant trees. The difference we can make, it doesn't seem like a lot when one organization does it, when one person does it, but that's the beauty of collective action. And that's why we get so excited about this kind of positive impact, because a small change, a few trees, they're really cheap to plant, but they make a huge difference. And at scale, they make the difference we need.
Yeah, I think, and like you say, it's fascinating and a very complex area around, deforestation. But I think, it just really demonstrates how, just the impact from your 75,000 customers, how that can really have that, trickle effect beyond those customers and, the wider community and planet. So I think, we've always seen in the print industry, there has been some, planting a tree for, every time you print, a certain number of pages and so on. So I wanted to kind of move on a bit to the kind of the usage side for your customers and also the analytics, because we believe that, I think, it's quite well acknowledged that in the print industry, probably ink and printers and, paper are probably, one of the key resources for the print industry. But actually, we believe data is probably the most valuable resource for the print industry in terms of how they can really leverage that data, get better insights into what their customers are doing and actually change customer behavior as well, which I think really PaperCut has been doing for a long time through the print management tools and, rules-based printing and responsible printing and, really helping customers reduce their print volumes. So I'm just interested in terms of how PaperCut uses the data from its customers to help them change behavior and how that fits in with the forest positive printing. Do they actually see that on their interface every time they print? Can they actually see the outcome of that as well? So if you can shed a bit more light on that, would be great.
At PaperCut, we've always been very passionate about the human element of printing, because it comes down to, at the end of the day, one person's decision to say, I need to print this or I don't. And if I do need to print it, can I print it, double-sided? Can I print it in black and white? Can I print it more responsibly? So we want to involve the individual in those responsible printing decisions as much as possible. And we're absolutely doing that with forest positive printing at PaperCut Grows in a couple of ways. So when a customer decides to join the Grows program and invest in making their printing forest positive, the analytics come into play at the beginning, which is really interesting, because with most sustainability programs, it's after the fact. For example, to become certified as a carbon neutral business, you have to do a lot of auditing and tracking, and you measure your emissions and your inputs over a period of time, looking backwards. And then they say, okay, yes, you've emitted this much carbon. You need to buy this many carbon credits. Good. Okay, you're square. You're now carbon neutral, which is great. But it's after the fact. You've already emitted all the carbon. With forest positive printing, with PaperCut Grows, what we do is up front, when a customer joins the program, we look at their printing going forward. And that is where the cool analytics comes in. Because we've been managing printing forever. We have a pretty good idea, based on the size of an organization's fleet, and if they're an existing PaperCut customer, their historical print behavior, trends, volumes, user base, all of that stuff. And we can say, okay, going forward, based on these factors, you're expected to print X number of pages over the next year. So to be forest positive, we calculate you need to plant Y number of trees. And like the math is relatively simple. Like the complex stuff is figuring out the pages. That's the trends and the analytics and the smooth lines and all of that really great algorithmic stuff that people way smarter than me in the engineering department take care of, thankfully. I'm not a big math guy, sorry, but I got really smart people behind me taking care of that. So we figure out the page volume anticipated. And then to convert that to trees, there's a really, really almost conveniently too simple number because like, how many pages make up a tree? It's a question we've asked for ages. And after a lot of research, we found, and it's quite common in the industry, there's some academic studies that were done some years ago based on average trees and industries and pulping processes. The average tree, when you chop it down, slice it up, make it into paper, 8,333 sheets of A4 printer paper on average. Okay. So what we do is we want to be forest positive, not just forest neutral. So instead of, 8,333 with the GROWS program, for every 8,000 pages that a customer is expected to print in the coming period, normally a year, we plant a tree at the beginning of the year. So before they've even printed, those trees are going in the ground. And when I say we plant the tree, like I don't put on my hat and my gloves and go out and plant the tree. Like that would be fun. And I volunteered at a tree planting day and it was awesome, but that's a different story. PaperCut is working with an organization called One Tree Planted. They're a registered nonprofit out of the United States, but they administer planting projects in, I think, 37 countries now, all over the world. And PaperCut's customers, when they join the GROWS program, can choose which of those countries, up to 3 of them, where they want their trees to be planted. And then One Tree Planted goes, plants the trees. They have all the oversight, the auditing, making sure it's done properly, the right species of trees in the right areas that are looked after. And we worked very hard to make sure we found a credible planting partner because you can't trust me to plant trees. I'm all thumbs, right? And they're not green.
No, I think that's it's really great to see that kind of collaboration, and it's more of a global initiative. And I think it's, like you say, the whole area is fascinating around sustainability and forest positive initiatives. And I think what PaperCut's doing, it's really sort of helping customers correlate their behavior in printing and actually see, a positive outcome. And, the fact that you mentioned about the number of pages that equate to a tree, and the fact that you do that upfront based on predicted volumes is really interesting, because actually I was going to ask, that sort of lead up to the next question was, obviously over the past few years with the pandemic, print volumes have declined quite significantly, particularly in the office, obviously. And I was just wondering whether you're seeing that home printing has, that's had an impact on home printing. Obviously now we're sort of in this phase of hybrid work, and I think it's still not really kind of settled in terms of what organisations are doing and how they're supporting hybrid workers and so on. But would you say that's actually something that you're looking at as well in terms of sort of home printing volumes? Are you helping organisations manage that, and is that part of your Forest Positive initiative as well?
Short answer, yes. Fantastic leading question, because you're absolutely right. From all of our data, print volumes net are still down year over year. They're coming back a bit, but a lot of organizations have just flat out said, we're never going back to the previous way of working. Mm-hmm. We're now going to be hybrid to some extent on an ongoing basis because it works. It works for health and safety, works for employee satisfaction, it works financially, it works. So yes, more people are printing remotely from home in a distributed way rather than centrally in a few big MFDs. Still, the net volumes aren't up to the previous level, but it's a really exciting area for us because this goes hand in hand. Remote work doesn't happen without cloud enablement technology. And, the print industry has been embracing the move to cloud, not just PaperCut, all of us, our colleagues, our partners, our competitors. It's a no-brainer. Because to provide distributed print services to remote workers, you need a cloud platform. It's just sensible. So PaperCut's own cloud platform, PaperCut Hive, yes, our forest positive printing is available in PaperCut Hive. So organizations that are managing remote printing, distributed printing, home printing. Any printer that's connected through the PaperCut cloud is tracked and used as part of the force positive calculation. The organization can make that individual's printing, even if it's a small amount, it adds up. They can still make that printing force positive too. So this isn't just limited to the big boxes in the offices. We want to help people wherever they work, right? That's the world we live in now.
Yeah, and as you say, PaperCut's approach is very much about the user and how their behaviour is around printing. So, obviously from an IT management perspective, they obviously have to manage the print environment. But I think, like you say, this move to the cloud is really helping organisations also lower their environmental impact by moving print servers away from an on-premise environment. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think
several conversations.
Cloud is really an enabler for sustainability, and I think that's something that we've been reporting on that for a while, but we're seeing a lot more momentum in that over the past year because of the pandemic and remote working and so on. But so obviously it's a really interesting area, and I'm really fascinated by what PaperCut's doing. And I would encourage the audience to have a look at PaperCut's website to hear more about the Force Positive program and how that works. And we'll also be looking forward to hearing more about the B Corp certification, because I think that's really interesting to see an ISV that's actually making proactive moves to improve the sustainability of their own operations. So I think that's a really strong differentiator for PaperCut in the market at the moment. So I'd just be interested to hear any predictions you have on the print industry. It doesn't have to be sustainability related, but obviously there's a lot of changes that the print industry has undergone over the last year. So yeah, if you could share anything that you see on the horizon, either for the industry or PaperCut in general.
Well, again, there's like 3 conversations in there, but that's okay. Little time, I'm going to get out my crystal ball, polish it up, gaze into the depths. One thing I see, at least for the coming year, that's going to be really in demand in the print industry is, in sustainability, customers right now are still struggling with getting a holistic view of their footprint, their environmental impact. Like I mentioned how challenging it is just to get carbon neutral certification and the auditing that has to be done. Customers still don't have an easy way, even just when it comes to their print footprint, let alone their whole IT footprint, of seeing where they stand, what the impact is. And this is something that I've been having some really interesting conversations with a lot of the manufacturer partners around, because many of them, I'm not going to drop names, you know who you are, the ones doing the good work, are working on, the life cycle of their devices, the manufacturing, the operation, the e-waste disposal, and understanding the environmental impact of the entire life of the device, plus the consumable layer on top of that, as you mentioned, the paper, the toner, the electricity to run the device, per day, per week, per month. Wouldn't it be great if those manufacturers who have that great information and PaperCut, who has intimate knowledge of a customer's print behavior and paper consumption, could bring that information together and present it to the customer in a nice, easy to understand dashboard style report? So at any moment, the customer could, in real time, see the environmental impact of their business activity, at least in the print world. I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And I wouldn't be surprised if one saw something like that appear in the coming year.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one, actually, because we, again, in our sustainability study earlier this year, we were looking at the kind of the analytics side of things. And you're right, it's very disconnected at the moment by hardware vendor and for customers operating a multi-vendor fleet, which, plays well to PaperCut's strengths in terms of, supporting a mixed fleet environment. Being able to understand that the full environmental impact across that really makes sense. And I think also then that can filter up to broader environmental impact reporting on the whole of the IT infrastructure. So yeah, I look forward to hearing more on that, because I think that's definitely something that would resonate with a lot of customers. So did you have anything else to share on what's next for PaperCut? Is that kind of where you're going in terms of the analytics side of things?
I think that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I'm going to leave the audience hungry, always leave them wanting more, right?
No, it's been really great, sort of hearing about what Papercut are doing, like I say, on their own operations, but also how you're helping customers. And as I said, encourage the audience to take a look at Papercut's website, because you've got some really great infographics and blog posts around what you're doing. And I think it really sort of helps put it into context in terms of the wider industry initiatives around circularity and the circular economy around print. So, really appreciate you joining me today, Jamie. It's been really interesting, and I look forward to hearing more about Papercut's initiatives in sustainability in the near future.
Thank you so much for having me, Luella. It's an absolute pleasure to chat. And I look forward to talking again soon, because we're not done. There's always going to be something new coming from Papercut.
Yeah. So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please visit quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.